all of that is also on my blogs because, I just want to get to the point of the therapy. So you get this call that, your daughter has to have emergency surgery and you have to okay it. They can't do anything. And of course, I'm very confused. What are you talking about? Emergency surgery. My daughter is with my mother, they're on their way home. What's going on? They can't give me any answers. We don't even know who your kid was with. We're just letting you know that we received a call about a bad car accident. Your daughter was the person in this car. We got your phone number. You have to say, okay. This is all the doctor could tell me. He doesn't have time to break things down to me. Okay, you need to say yes or no. So I say yes, of course. But of course I have questions. And the day goes on. I eventually get to the hospital. Long story short, my daughter survives, but is left with injuries that she will have scars for the rest of her life. She will always have these scars. And also she is left with a year of physical therapy, hospitalizations, a whole bunch of crazy stuff. But this is where I came in. When I got to the hospital after her first surgery and they wheel her out, and she is a little 4-year-old. She's 4 years old and she's small. 4-year-olds, they're kind of tall, but not whatever. She's still a little person. And I'm in the waiting room waiting for her, and they wheel her out and she sees my face and she just cries because she wants me to hold her and she's begging me to hold her. And I'm holding her, but I can't pick her up, they say, because the surgery is not done. They just did the major, they still have so much work to do. She has a broken nose, her jaw is broken, all this crazy scars, tissue missing, and she's crying so much that I actually see blood coming out because of, she's crying, and I'm trying to relax her. And I remember getting down on a knee and praying, and I said to myself, being the fact that I had been being abused all these years, I wondered, is there a God? And I understand that I'm making this choice. I understand that I'm staying in this relationship and no one is forcing me, but something is keeping me. Something in my head is not giving me the strength to get up and realize that this relationship is not for me. This person is not for me. But I got down and I remember saying, I don't know what's up there. I don't know, God, if there is a God, if there's a woman God, female God, I don't care what's in that sky, but I need you. I need you to protect my daughter. I need you to let her get through this. And if she gets through this, I need you to understand that taking her away is not going to do me any justice. And I want you to understand that, of course, at this point, I don't care about anybody else in the world. I understand that losing a child is the worst thing that can happen to a parent. And there have been people that have lost their child. It doesn't make them any more special than me. It doesn't make me any more special than them. But at this moment, this is my child. And I need the universe, God, spirits, angels to hear me and understand that this is going to destroy me. This is going to completely change the person that I am. And I need her to get through this. I need her to survive this. And when she does, I'm out of this relationship. I am out because I feel like the universe had tried so many times to get me to leave this man. So many times it tried to get me to realize that this is not what you need to be doing. This is not good for you. This is not good for your kids. You are better than this. You deserve better than this. And I stayed. And I took this as a smack. This was the universe saying, we've tried everything. We have done everything we possibly can to let you know that this relationship is going to end with you dead or him dead, because you're going to get to the point where one day you're just going to snap and you're going to kill him. You don't want that. You don't want to die. You don't want to take his life. We want you to leave him. And so here it is. Here is your wake-up call. Get up and get out. And so that is what I said. I said, I am out. I am out of this. My kids deserve better than this. Please, please help me and get me out of this. And she survives. She survives. My grandmother survives. My mother, my brother, and my other daughter. Everybody survives this car accident that I tell you, if you would have seen the car, no one would have expected not at least one person to have left this earth that day, because it was a bad accident. And I had to go through therapy with my daughter. It took a lot, that my grandmother had to go through physical therapy. It wasn't like it was 1, 2, 3. It was about a year, even for my brother, a year and a half worth of a lot of, pain and strength and money and all of that. And once my daughter got to a place where I could go back to work and she could start going to school and my grandmother was a little better and everybody was a little better, I knew that I had to end this relationship. And so I did. I ended it. And it was the best thing I ever did for myself. It was the best thing that I ever did for my kids. And it was just the best thing for me. You would think that leaving that relationship was the easy part. You would think that the windows open, the sun came out, and everything was magic. But no, I wasn't. I was angry at myself. I felt like I wasn't a good mother. I mean, what kind of mom allows a man to physically, emotionally, and mentally abuse her and stay with him? All of the cheating. There was illegitimate children born in this relationship. There were nights I cried because it was so hard for me to deal with the aftermath of the relationship now that it was over. And then what made it worse is that I was dealing with little girls who were also dealing with their emotions and not really knowing what they should and shouldn't feel. And I didn't know how to care for myself emotionally, let alone care for my kids. I just didn't understand it. I didn't know where to go from here because he's gone. Yes, but now what am I supposed to do from this point on? And I was talking to someone one day and I was telling them that. I was just like, I'm all over the place. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm losing weight. I'm angry. I'm angry all of the time. I'm snapping. I'm just very lost. And my friend said to me, have you ever thought about therapy? Is it something that you are against? Because obviously we know in the African American community, we don't do therapy. No, you talk to your pastor, you talk to your mama, but you don't talk to a complete stranger who doesn't have a religious bias or an emotional bias or a know you bias. They are just educated in knowing the emotions of the human being. And no, I wasn't against it. I said to myself, I'm not against therapy. I don't know why I didn't think about doing it, but it's not something I'm against. And I started to see a therapist, and I figured that was what was in the best interest of me, and that was what was in the best interest of my children. And I also thought my kids needed to see a therapist too. But I said, I got to start with me. It has to start with the tree. You know what I'm saying? It has to start with the head. I have to be able to navigate my emotions and navigate myself so I can then navigate my kids and even figure out what they need. And it was at therapy that I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and major depressive disorder. And my therapist said that she definitely thought I had postpartum since I had my first daughter. And if you think about it, because I had her, I lost my friends. I spent a lot of time alone. My mom was at work. And when my mom came home from work, she'd play with the baby and give me maybe an hour. I'd be able to take a shower or, I would read a book or something. But then after that, my mom had to get ready for work for the next day. She had to eat dinner. She had to shower. She had to get herself together. And then the next day be up at 5 in the morning, get ready to go to work. And then I started that routine of just being home by myself. And of course, I had a little bit of resentment to my daughter. It wasn't her fault. I brought her into this world. But, anyone who has dealt with postpartum, anybody who was a young mother, even it doesn't matter young, but obviously young mothers, we go through this more because we are not emotionally or mentally equipped yet to be a mom. I mean, I'm just being honest. I was not ready to be a mother at 19 years old, but I became one and I had to, put my big girl panties on. But guess what? My big girl panties were still a little girl because I was just this young girl fresh out of high school who didn't know her ass from her elbow, and then the major depressive disorder came from being a victim of domestic violence. That's just automatic when you're dealing with someone and your fear and knowing every day could be the day and not knowing what they were going to do today and what type of abuse you were going to endure. That just comes with it. And it may sound weird, but having answers to my emotional state was awakening for me, which is why the post on my web page is called Awakened, because it felt so good to have a title, to have some answers to what I was feeling, and to have examples, and to have books, and for the therapist to really break down to me what, giving me examples of things that I possibly was feeling, and then me saying yes, going through the checklist, yes, 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 and yes. And I knew that the road to getting better wasn't going to be easy. I knew I was going to have to tap into things from childhood, dealing with, my mom and my grandmother and their issues, and just a couple of things that have, like I said, I didn't have a bad, what you call quote unquote bad, but I had things growing up that really affected me that had nothing to do with before I had my daughter. And then I had my daughter, and then I had this abuse, and then even the fear of my daughter dying. I should have went to therapy after that. And even my therapist had said it. I didn't deal with the emotions of almost losing my child, and the anger that I felt at my mom, even though the accident wasn't her fault, but she was the person who was responsible for my kids at that time. I just didn't deal with a lot. I didn't deal with a lot of emotional stuff that came with my brother, and feeling like, he was favored, and just a lot of things that happened that I lost out on because of him. It was just, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, because the therapist was going to tap into things that weren't just about the accident, that weren't just about the physical abuse that I endured. That was about my childhood. That was about my mom. That was about my grandmother, that I really had never talked about. I had never even thought, oh, is this affecting me? And, that's hard. It's difficult. And then to have to talk to the people in my family, to talk to my grandmother about it. And what I want to say is I appreciate my mom. My mom was very open to me talking to her and expressing things to her and letting her know what I was getting out of therapy. And she was open to that. My grandmother, West Indian woman, was not as open to me telling her how her actions affected me. She did the best that she could, and she looks at it that way. I did the best that I could with what I had, and you kind of got to deal with it. And that's not my job. My job is not to therapy her. My job was, when I was going through therapy, is that I allow myself to tell someone how I was feeling. This is how you made me feel. This is the repercussions of that feeling. And that's it. After that, I'm done. As long as I expressed it and I allowed myself to be okay with their version and how they saw and how their story was with this, I can move on. And then my therapist also recommended a journal, which was perfect for me because I had been keeping a journal since I was young anyway. I mean, that is why initially I started my webpage, because I like to write. I like to write down my feelings. And for me, it's easier to do, to write and have a blog than it is to have the podcast. And also it gets to be more personal. I get to write more and be more in depth about what I'm feeling. And also now, while going to therapy, one of the things that she suggested is a support group, whether it's religious, whether it's a support group for, domestic violence survivors, whether it's a teen mom group, whatever, just a support group of other people. You can hear their stories and sometimes realize yours is not as bad, or, maybe someone can give you advice and tell you. It's always good when you can relate. Everybody knows it's always good when you can relate. And that's one thing about people. We flock to those that we feel have a piece of us. That's why cultures flock together, even races, sexes, all of that stuff, because it's always good to feel like you're around. Everybody doesn't have to be the same, but if you can relate to someone as human beings, we like that. We like that feeling. So I joined a support group for teen domestic violence survivors, actually. And in that support group, one of the girls had talked about, becoming Muslim and how becoming Muslim really saved her. And she just talked about the studying. And I just said to myself, you know what? I had kind of given up on religion. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic schools my entire life, but I always felt like the God that was taught to me didn't love me because of all the things that, being a bisexual woman, not having, not being married when I had my daughter, I did have an abortion in my life. I have had an abortion. So these are things that I felt like, I'm told that God doesn't like gay, God doesn't like people who have abortion, God doesn't like unwed women, God, all these things. And I'm like, well, I really don't want to go back into Christianity. I don't want to study something that basically tells me that I'm no good. So I looked into I did look into, Muslims and Jewish and a whole bunch of other religions. And the one that stuck out to me, the one that made me feel like I really wanted to study and learn more, was Buddhism. It was really important for me when I decided to start getting back into religion and attending a temple, which is what Buddhists